Okay, I think we're about at 1 p.m., so I think we can get kicked off. I understand from we've got a team of folks working to get people into the webinar, and I understand there are a few still to come. So what we've actually got as a first slide is just a video, just to sort of set the scene a little bit. So let me hit play on that. It's only a minute long, but I think by the time that's done, we can kick off properly, and let's go from there. Turning a decision in under 1 second. Passive liveness detection moves further on your users while detecting theft attacks. Enhanced fraud signals analyze additional data size suspicion. Explainable and actionable insights support effective investigation and decision making. Discover biometric authentication from Verif today. Okay, I think we're good to kick off now. We've got everybody in the room, so let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome. We've got my name is Chris Hooper. I'm our brand director here at Verif. I've got a really exciting discussion for you today, actually, which we'll get to in a moment. But I just want to introduce my co-hosts who are joining me today, my colleagues. Gio, would you like to go first? Just give a very quick intro as to who you are, what your role is, and maybe a little sneak preview of what you'll be talking about today too.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. Hey, everyone, I'm Gio. At Verif, I work as a product manager, and my focus area in Verif is everything biometrics. So I work closely with customers to understand their problems and make sure the right problems are getting solved. And today I'm very happy to give an overview of the product we've been working in Verif for the last 1 year, and we have some new capabilities, so I'll be very happy to share more about it, and I'm excited to be here, and also looking forward to hear your questions and any feedback about this as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Gio. Yeah, we've set aside a load of time for questions at the end. I'll get to the schedule in a moment, but Margaret, would you like to go next just to give a brief intro to yourself, what your role is, and again, just a little sort of taster as to what you'll be talking about too?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Margit, and I am the Associate Customer Success Manager here at Verif. So my mainly tasks are just to take care of my customers. So I'm here to help you, to guide you, to make sure that there are no hiccups. And if there are, then I'm making sure that we can come together with the team, with Gio and Chris and everyone else, to make sure that we are offering you the best benefits of our solution.
Awesome.
Very excited. Sorry. And very excited to also talk about biometric authentication here. And I'll be more so focusing on the use cases where we see the use of this amazing product all over the industries. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. And I think, yeah, it's sort of two sides of the coin here, because we've got Gio to sort of talk about the nuts and bolts, the technicalities of things. But Margaret's been really close to how our customers are actually using this product, some of the use cases that drove them towards it in the first place, but how they're applying it and some of the results that they're seeing as well, which is really exciting. And just on what we're going to talk about today, you're going to have a few minutes of me first, unfortunately. I'm going to be setting the scene, just providing a little bit of background. Part of my role here is to look after our thought leadership and research into the market and so on. And we've got some really interesting data from proprietary data and our own research surveys that we've conducted, just to sort of set the scene and paint a picture of what's happening in the market at the moment. Then we're going to jump into primarily Gio talking about biometric solutions, as he indicated just a moment ago, what they are, how they can be used, some of the applications for them. And then Margaret comes in section 3 to talk about our biometric solution out in the wild and how customers are using it. The bulk of this section we've kind of left open to a Q&A, actually. So if you do have any questions, let's skip to the next slide, because I think this is the one you want to be focusing on. You can join us at slido.com and just enter this code, which is hash 6071922. The easier way to do it is just to grab your phone and scan the QR code that's on screen now. It will take you to a separate window. On that, it will take you directly to the place to enter your question. Just a free form. You can type whatever you like. You will also be able to see the questions that have been entered already by other people. So if there's one that somebody's got in there first and asked it for you, just give that one a thumbs up and it sort of pushes it to the top of the list. So you can sort of rank them and give them likes that way. We're going to try and get through as many of these as we possibly can today. We also have been running some polls on LinkedIn, so have some questions submitted in ahead of time anyway that we can get through. But we're going to try and get through all of these today. And just as a general sort of piece of housekeeping, I suppose, any questions that we don't answer, we are planning some sort of shorter quickfire webinars where all we do is answer questions. So we will sort of, we have obviously an email address we can contact you on now, and we'll say sort of in the next few weeks or so that we're going to be planning to address your question, or these are the questions we're planning to address. So if you want to jump on for a quick 10-minute, 15-minute session where we just blast through and answer as many as we can, I think that's something that we want to do in the future. So I think I've left this slide on long enough now that all of you should have scanned it. So let's move on and get started for real. As I said, this sort of setting the scene section is down to me. So let me just take a few minutes of your time just to run through that. I want to start with the issue of fraud. There are a couple of issues at stake here, but fraud is the one that is really the place where we always sort of tend to start. We have a number of research reports that we've done this year. The Verif fraud report is based on our own customer data. So they are interactions where our customers are interacting with potential fraudsters with their own customers that we obviously monitor and keep a track on and are able to sort of collate together to understand market trends and so on. Our Verif fraud industry pulse survey is where we interview decision makers. So that's people like you on this call. They're sort of head of fraud, head of financial risk, head of compliance, or VP of compliance, and so on. The folks who are making the decisions around how their business should interact with fraud. So we're able to sort of get data from two sides of the coin, really. And the big picture that we're seeing is that fraud is a growing problem. I've been involved in 3 of these fraud reports over the last few years. We've seen it every year, and last year was no exception. In fact, it was the biggest rise. So there were a 20% increase in fraudulent attempts to access our customer services between 2022 and 2023. We're just starting to collate the data now for next year's report, and I can tell you the picture is exactly the same. We don't know the exact number yet, but it's going to be pointing in the same direction, that fraud is an increasing threat. This has been validated by US decision makers, who said that 87% of them had said that they'd seen an increase in online fraud in their business as well. So these aren't necessarily our customers, Verif's customers. These are people who are out in the market as well. And so they've seen the same thing. So what we can sort of take from this is that fraud is making a sort of a pretty steep upward trajectory. And what we can sort of say too is that not only, I think when you look at things in percentage terms, it can be a bit abstract sometimes. I think when you put it in dollar terms, it's very different. Our fraud industry pulse survey revealed that 90% of fraud professionals saw an annual revenue hit of between 1% and 9%. So that's only 10% of businesses that are completely fraud-free at the moment. That's a pretty small amount. Everyone else saw fraud to some degree, some up to 9%. And I think if you were to put that in dollar terms, if your annual revenue is 100 million, you could be losing 9 million a year due to fraud. And that's pretty substantial. And I think when it's put into those terms, it makes it a lot more real. And as I say, takes it to a different level for me. It's not just that fraud is growing, it's also changing. So we've identified this a lot with our fraud industry pulse survey, as I say, but we see it in our own interactions as well. AI is the thing that's changing the fraud landscape. We have done a webinar recently that just digs into this particular topic with a few of our experts sort of saying exactly what this threat looks like. It's well worth going on to verif.com/resources and looking at some of the on-demand webinars if you're interested in this, because it's, as I say, we'll touch on it today, but if you really want to deep dive, that's available to you. So what we're saying is that fraud is growing and it's changing. Fraudsters are more sophisticated. The tools they're using are more sophisticated. They're also easier to use. It's easier to get those tools into the hands of somebody who wants to do harm. So that is changing the fraud landscape to a pretty substantial amount. And furthermore, your customers are starting to notice it. We found on a customer survey we did earlier this year, back in March, that 75% of end users, so this is your customers, actually consider a company's history of fraud before signing up to a new online service or platform. So that means they look at things like their reputation, the robustness of their processes, and so on. And before they even make that decision to become a customer of yours. So if your systems aren't robust, if you don't have that reputation of being being able to sort of fight fraud in that way and prevent and keep their details safe, there's every chance they could drop out of the process and go and look elsewhere. But I think that fraud is only one half of the problem, right? And I think, the title of this webinar suggests that actually what we're talking about here is this blend of trying to fight fraud on one hand, but also trying to cater to an increasing user experience demand. So we're talking about here that customers have a raised level of expectation when it comes to digital services. And I can speak for myself here, and I'm sure all of you are the same too. If logging into a platform takes too long, I just drop out and I go elsewhere. And I think that customers are used to this sort of slick, streamlined onboarding service or sort of re-logging into an account. That means that they're not really prepared to tolerate much in the way of friction. We have, of course, there's this balance that we always have to strike with how do we prevent fraud on one hand, how do we maintain a really smooth customer experience on the other, and that's what we're going to be talking about today with biometrics, because some of the statistics we've got here talking about basically the market. The market appetite for biometrics, I suppose. 39% of end users said they viewed facial biometrics as the most secure and easy, actually, approach to accessing an online account. This was when it was compared to things like passwords or knowledge-based authentication, two-factor authentication as well. So we were sort of putting it up against potential rivals there, and this one came out as the most popular. And then 60% said they would be comfortable using facial recognition to access accounts online as well. So I think there's a growing appetite for this. Some of the more recent research we've done actually sort of shows in a bit more depth around age demographics as well, with younger generations being a lot more willing to adopt this as their preferred means of accessing their accounts or reaccessing their accounts. So all of that points to a big picture. It's not just about fraud. I think to summarize that fraud is growing, it's changing shape, but also we have to try and balance this against good customer expectations as well. And that's where I'd like to bring Gio back in, because I think that you've got something really important to sort of say about this stuff, Gio. And I think we can sort of start with this piece around how sort of biometrics are designed. There's kind of the emphasis on user demand, I suppose, and putting the customer first. And that's probably a good point to hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think what I want to reiterate again is fighting fraud is extremely important, but on the same end, user experience is also extremely important. And one of the challenge when we speak to our customers is many times to fight fraud, you need more data, you need to get more information from the users. And when organizations do that, they create huge amount of friction. They may not think about it's just one more ask, but for that end user, it may be a lot of things to delve into. One example I could think of is sometimes when you log into your online account, you might be asked to enter a one-time password where you might have to download an application of Google Authenticator or Microsoft. So the end user now have to go through the App Store, install this application, and then enter and generate a code. So the amount of friction we are creating to prevent fraud many times is really extremely costly. So that is where, when we wanted to build our biometric-based authentication product, what we wanted to understand is it's not just about that session. What we want to do is to understand the user, their pain points, and how we can leverage that user's the knowledge of that user in authenticating. So it's not just about one session. It's more about this user has been interacting with the organization for quite some time. So we could potentially leverage more data point inherently, but also use biometrics in a very user experience friendly way, in a very simple way to authenticate and prevent fraud, and also prevent bad actors from committing anything malicious to their organization. So that's how I see how we can find that balance between user experience and fraud prevention with biometrics.
Awesome. And let's focus in on the user experience part for a moment, because I think just talking about Veriff's sort of biometric authentication solution, could you just tell us sort of exactly what the process is for an end user when they're going to use it? I think we've got a slide to sort of illustrate it a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think it's very illustrative in this slide. I think the end user, when the customer wants to authenticate someone, what Verif is giving is that trust. We are ensuring that trust. You can trust this user. So what we wanted to give is, we don't want it to create more friction, and we wanted to have a simple biometric gathering process, which the user is very much aware of, and they are used to doing it. So we just asked to take a simple selfie. So I know most of the smartphone users are kind of used to do that. So we are not asking something extra there. And we don't ask for any identity documents here. We just ask for a simple selfie. And the user, that's the only action user is doing. Everything else happens in the background. Verif reviews the biometrics, review if there is any attempts of fraud, or is the behavior of the user correct. All that analysis is happening in the background, and we pass that decision. We pass a recommended decision to the customer we work with, and they can then decide what to do with their user. Can they trust this user, or they should take further actions on the customer front to mitigate any risks?
Absolutely, and so I think that's the key point. Is a sort of the simplicity for the user, isn't it? As you said, that they've got most people are familiar with taking a selfie these days. I think whether they use iPhones or anything else, it's it's one of those actions that is kind of automatic to people now. I think for the user it's simple. I think, but actually it's we've got in the middle image here it says sort of biometric analysis. I think there's actually a lot of complexity that goes into that behind the scenes. Let's talk about that now, because I think what's sort of happening while the user is doing this. What's happening on the other end of the spectrum?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very important for us to review that. As I mentioned, what we wanted to do when we designed the product is to ensure the user experience is there, but we don't want to do any trade-offs in fraud prevention. So if you recall, to prevent fraud, we need more data. So for that, what we are trying to do is when the user is taking selfie, we also know a bit more about that user. We know which device they are using, which network they are using, and what are the different behavioral signs that we can understand when someone is doing a session. So we look into different risks associated with the user. So we check if the selfie is good enough, if it's like not a deep fake, if it's an attack. We also look into the behavior, like is the user taking too long for doing the session? Are they doing the session in different locations at the same time? How is their network? Are they using any IP addresses which we think are fraudulent? Or how about their device? Is the device a jailbroken or a stolen device? Are they using VPN? So all these risks are able to gather that inherently, which helps to improve our decision making. We recommend a decision to our customer, but it's not just based on biometrics. But in addition to that biometrics, we also prevent different risks associated, and we mitigate that risk by factor all this into our decision making, and we give a recommended decision. So that's why I say one interaction, maximum insights, right? Instead of creating more friction, with that one interaction, inherently we are able to do gather maximum intel that will help us to.
I see, and I think it's probably just worth exploring here a little bit, Gio, just as a side point. Actually, is that what is the selfie being compared against? Because I think there's a couple of options here, isn't there? Depending on the level of sort of maybe possibly the industry you're in and so on. Is it worth just having a very quick sort of tangent into that very quickly?
So we have different customers use this biometric authentication product for different use cases. So most of our customers, they already have onboarded these users using our identity verification process. So they have done an identity verification process with us, and we use that selfie. And this selfie is compared, the selfie they are taking right now during authentication is compared against the selfie they took during the identity verification process. And so the value that we are bringing here is every time the customer believes they want to authenticate or mitigate any risk, instead of triggering a full identity verification, they will trigger our biometric authentication. So they gather the selfie. We use that inherent data we have from the identity verification and also from the biometric authentication session to understand the user behavior. And also we compare that selfie again that they took during identity verification into during the biometric code. So this is where exactly the comparison happened, but it can also be not just identity verification. In our dating customers, they just don't use full identity verification. It can also be just a selfie gathering process they have done during onboarding, and we just compare against the same selfie as well.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the real advantage here, isn't it? Is sort of those people who are coming back to an account. I think when you first have the sign up, there has to be some friction there to generate the initial templates or whatever it may be that you're using. But once we have those, the system can do its work effectively, and everybody can come back in to re-enter an account with the minimal sort of friction that goes there. So I think we've probably touched on some of the benefits there, but is it worth quickly just sort of reiterating what some of the other business benefits of this sort of type of solution are as well?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure Margot is going to cover a lot of the value this product is going to bring for our customers. But what I can say as a product side is, in addition to giving this decision making, we are also giving an explanation about our decision making. So this insights can be extremely valuable for our customers in building their own policies, internal operational procedures. For instance, if you are a financial tech company, you might want to trigger your own risk assessment or internal operational reviews. So instead of just saying approve and decline, we also give you via our web integration, you can consume this decision making as insight. So that's another value we give. So it's not just a black box solution. You also get the value of understanding how the decisions are made and what are the factors we used and considered in making those decisions. So that's one aspect we give to our customers. And I think the user experience is a great thing. Again, I want to reiterate, it's a very simple user experience. There is close to none friction. So that's very intuitive. And the decision is fast as well. We just give less than a second. So in authentication, it's important to be quick. So we don't take 5 or 10 seconds to give a response, because everything is fully automated. We give that response in less than a second. So you can use this product in various workflows and integrate it with faster. So I think those are the top 3 things that I want to really call it out during the session.
That's awesome. Thank you. And that's a really, really good segue into what I'm going to ask Margit next, actually. So, Margit, I'd like you to join again. Welcome back. And let us know sort of, as I say, some of the interactions that you're having with customers and what you're seeing at the moment. I think you're kind of working across industries, right? You're pretty industry agnostic, I would say, in the way that your approach to things. And obviously, the customer demand, the appetite for risk, the regulatory burden, you could say as well, is very different depending on what industry that you're working in. Let's talk about some of the sort of the most popular use cases that you've seen, and I think probably let's start with financial services, because it's the one that's sort of biggest to us. And I think as well where maybe that regulatory burden is the highest and the appetite for fraud is the lowest. So it's quite a good place to start there. So are you able just to give us a little bit of insight as to what you're seeing in the market within this particular vertical?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chris. So I hope all of you are having a wonderful time so far, and I hope everyone is enjoying this session. So grab your beverage and make sure you're comfortable, and let's continue from here. All right, so let's talk more about where we can use biometric authentication. So there's a lot of use cases for this. It can be used really everywhere. However, in some cases, we do see more benefits of it. For example, let's start with FinServ industry, just like Chris mentioned. So I have a question for you all. How many of us are using cash every day for purchases, and only cash? I can bet that we all have done some kind of transactions via some financial or investment platforms and couldn't imagine our daily life without it. Okay, so now let's say you're planning to send a huge amount of money or tokens or anything as such to someone, or you're supposed to receive it from someone. So of course you want to be sure that all the transaction is legitimate and it all goes smooth as butter. So this is where biometric authentication comes into play. You can ensure the identity of your customer by letting them do the biometric authentication session, which is simply them taking a selfie of themselves. So this is something that Gio already pointed out, right? So this way, they won't have to do the whole IDV process again, as they already have an IDV session with you. And then they're trying to come back to the platform. They're just simply taking a selfie. So before making any significant transfers, we double check if the person is who they claim to be, to avoid any fraudulent hacking into the account by some stranger.
Awesome, thank you. That's a good intro, and I think that's a really good point at the end there. Actually, is that the kind of the whole point of this is just confirming that the account holder is who they say they are, right? And I think that one of the most prominent types of fraud that we're seeing with our customer at the moment is account takeover fraud. So I think it's probably worth just focusing on that just for a moment. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the market here with this, and how organizations are using biometrics to fight this particular type of fraud?
Yes, of course. So account takeover is something we are facing daily, and not only in FinServe, but all across the industries. Like mentioned before, this is especially important for FinServe, though, as this is where fraudsters try to enter and penetrate through someone's account by mimicking their behavior and the facial expressions. In this case, biometric authentication is a wonderful product that can absolutely eliminate the risk of this and confirm the user's facial biometrics are the same as they are on their initial IDV session. And also, let me just tell you a little secret. To make sure that the platform, your platform, is safer than ever, Verif can ensure that any fraudster caught by biometric authentication, meaning that the selfie is not matching with the IDV session, can be blocked, and we won't be letting them into the system anymore. This is called blocklisting, where we can take the selfie of the fraudster or someone who is trying to go into someone's account, and we are adding them to blocklist to make sure that anytime they're coming back to your platform, trying to do even IDV session, they won't be let through because they will be declined by us.
Awesome, and I think that that's another really good point as well. Is that these a lot of tools in isolation are great, but I think when you can combine them with a lot more that's going on, you can create this sort of fraud prevention ecosystem that we've talked about many times in our content and in other webinars for sure, where it's really that fraudsters are opportunistic. They'll keep probing and trying to find weaknesses. So you really need to be prepared for all threats. And I think having biometrics in place is maybe the key foundational stone to all of that. But really, there's so much more behind the scenes that add to the layers of protection. Let's switch to another industry very, very briefly. That's been another one that's been seen a real big sort of uptake in biometric usage, and that's mobility. What we call mobility, but it's sort of transportation, car hire, things like that. How have you seen the solution be used in this particular industry?
Yes, so how do we use biometric authentication in the mobility industry? With any mobility industry, we want to be sure to be extra diligent to make sure we are keeping fraudsters away from accessing the vehicles. This is not only bad for the fraudulent behavior, but also it could be really, really dangerous because the users are having the access to the physical vehicle. To avoid these kind of situations, user would need to be re-identified each time they're trying to renting a vehicle again. So again, just a simple selfie once again, and the user can be led into a car, let's say, for example. And this is also very useful as it will save so much time for a user, as they would only need to take a quick selfie to confirm their identity instead of memorizing complicated passwords or some questions from their past they don't even remember anymore. And also, it would still not be safe enough, right? And biometric authentication will be completed in seconds and confirmation will be received right away. Verif also offers a prevention from multi-accounting called velocity abuse, where users can only create one or certain amount of accounts. So combining the velocity abuse with biometric authentication will give an extra layer of security where users won't be able to create a new account to try to trick the system because, as Chris mentioned, fraudsters are getting smarter and smarter. And as one of our customers has said, and I quote, "We are preventing inexperienced drivers from using this service and blocking fraudulent users from rejoining the service by creating a new account," end quote.
Awesome. Yeah, look, I think it shows, doesn't it, that financial services has an obvious need for this type of thing, but I think it shows that it's elsewhere as well in industries that are less regulated and everything else. And I think another one of those actually that I think we'd like to talk about next is kind of in the e-commerce space, in marketplaces. I think there's a very particular and very unique problem there in some ways because there is a double need for verification. You've got buyers and sellers who you need to sort of confirm the identities of. So how have you seen some of our customers in that particular space using it? Because I think it is slightly different to the two we've just mentioned.
Yes, so I will just I will explain two kind of use cases that I could come up with, but let me just start with the first one. So for one example, marketplaces are often selling restricted goods as well as high value items. So this means that our customers want to just be extra careful and secure the system before any purchases are made by their clients, right? So using Veriff's IDV service, marketplaces can confirm the identity of the user and secure an already existing session to be used for further purposes. And you guessed it, for biometric authentication. So as with FinServ and mobility industries, marketplaces can also use biometric authentication for re-identifying the users before any purchases of goods. So for example, once a user has bought some, let's say, age-restricted goods, they would have to prove their age and identity before the goods are handed over to them. So this works especially well with the industries where delivery is done by, let's say, little robot machines, opposed to actual humans. So now I have reassured that biometric authentication is a wonderful way to re-identify the user and confirm it's the same person, right? But you may ask, how about the age verification? Well, Veriff also offers a solution for that. We do have the age validation product, which makes sure that the person is over a certain age. So for example, if you are 17 years old and trying to buy some alcohol via food delivery market, then no, we will not let you go to it, and we will confirm that you are in fact not 18 or 21-year-old, and we will decline the session for you. But the other use case that I see is the marketplaces can also mean that not only do we need the identity of the buyer, but also seller, like you just before mentioned, Chris, right? So in nowadays world where more and more transactions are taking place through the internet, the security of the identity becomes more and more important. We don't want to exhaust the buyers and the sellers to complete a new IDV session each time they're trying to sell or buy something. And therefore, biometric authentication would be an ideal solution for ensuring the identity of the user. This way, all transactions can be safely done by both parties, and business can concentrate on building and perfecting their own business, whereas Veriff is the one who is taking care of the security processes and any possible fraud attempts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The last one actually around. I mean, I think, a lot of this stuff is very complex. So fighting fraud is very complicated. It's really hard for in-house teams to do this. I would just suggest that let's sort of leave that to the experts, and then you can focus on what it is that your business actually does, and generate income through that. And one example we've got actually is a marketplace customer of ours in the US who sell high-end bicycles. They were having a very big fraud problem, and I think they've kind of we're finding that there was just the manual processes of having to sort of check documents themselves, process documents themselves every time somebody came into their account to log into their account to make a purchase, was getting very, very cumbersome for both for their internal people, but also for their users and their customers. So they have started to use biometric authentication with a great deal of success. Another one, you mentioned the age verification piece in there, Margaret. Actually, another one I think I'd like to turn to very quickly is gambling, which is maybe the final industry that has seen the most uptake of this product so far. There are some really big problems in this industry around multi-accounting. I think you mentioned that just a moment ago, and this is where users open up more than one account to try to take advantage of sign-up bonuses or other incentives. Can you explain just a little bit about how biometrics is stopping that particular type of fraud?
Yeah, of course. So yes, as you mentioned, I did mention the multi-accounting already before. However, this is especially important for gambling industries, and here Veriff can help. So in gambling industries, we can oftentimes see campaigns where a certain prize is given out once a new member creates an account there. So this, however, opens up an opportunity for users to create as many accounts as possible to claim and receive all the possible bonuses, right? So now, I did mention that for this kind of behavior, we have a perfect solution called velocity abuse, where we restrict the possibility of creating multiple accounts. But how does the biometric authentication help with this? Biometric authentication would give an extra layer of security whenever a user wants to cash out their price. So whenever they want to cash it out, take it over, we would make sure that it is the same person indeed. So now that we have made sure that one user has one account only, and is ready to claim their bonus, we would make them go over the biometric authentication and then prove who they really are. You see, in gambling, account takeover can also take place, and we want to be extra sure to prevent that and let the users have the best user experience. And another use case I can think of in gambling industry is account recovery. So let's say someone hasn't accessed their account for a long time and want to log in again, but does not remember the passwords. And as Gio previously mentioned that, we do not remember our childhood favorite pet or whoever, so it can be cumbersome. So if we already have the initial IDV in place, with biometric authentication, we can identify the user and reopen the account for them. So in conclusion, just to sum it all up from my side, biometric authentication is not only quick and easy to complete, but will also show the users that companies do care about the security of their services and want to give the users the best value of it. So if you have recognized a use case for your own platform to all the talk here for biometric authentication, then make sure to let your customer success manager here at Verif know, and we are here to help you further. Thank you.
100%. Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of information we're throwing at people here, right? And I think that we've got plenty more if you want to explore it. We have plenty of other content to look at. We have our biometrics intelligence report, which we'll include a link to at the end, actually, and in the follow-up email that follows this particular webinar. So there is more information coming your way, but I think sometimes the easiest way is to actually talk to somebody and lay out the particular use case you're struggling, or type of fraud that you're struggling with, and we can sort of recommend some solutions from there. Okay, so I think we're into that part of the discussion now where we can take some questions. We've got one from the Slido actually, which is, I think, probably for Gio. What sort of data points do you capture during the biometric selfie? And I think this might be a good one to sort of elaborate a little bit on the real detail that we take from a person's facial image.
Yeah, sounds good. I think, yeah, during the capture process, we of course be able to understand how good of a selfie it is, to understand what is the lighting conditions, is there how clear the facial features are. So the facial landmarks like eyes, nose, mouths are important. Is it visible? So and the quality of the selfie itself. So that's one data point we look into it. And in addition to that, we also look into different data points like how long the person usually takes to do a selfie. And normally it should be a quick process, unless if the process of taking selfie is extremely longer, it can be quite suspicious sometimes, because we are not asking for a lot of things, and usually it's fraudsters who are switching up between networks or accounts. The duration of selfie can be longer. And in addition to that, we also look into the device as I mentioned before. We know if they are using our selfie capture SDK. So our customers can use our capture flow, and we will be able to understand what's the device they are using, the network, and the locations. So these all are data points that are important for us as well. Yeah, I think those are certain data points that we look into, quite important for us from biometrics authentication perspective. Yeah.
Interesting. And actually, there is a LinkedIn question that we had earlier in the week, actually, which does link to this as a part of a follow-on, actually. How do we accommodate for people's appearance changing? If somebody has to start wearing glasses, or grows a beard, or God forbid, like me, loses their hair, what is the way that the system adapts to that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So so there is two aspects to it. So the first one is sometimes we gather the selfie image, let's say 1 or 2 years ago. From 2 years ago, they did that identity verification, and they are doing biometric authentication. So the selfie image may be quite outdated. So one way we are doing it's this user centricity, as I mentioned. Every interaction they do, we are kind of improving the template. So which means we are storing we are not storing the actual image, we are storing a representation of that person. So we never store the actual selfie image. So we are just storing the numerical representation, and we are comparing against that. So that's what we call the biometric template. So this biometric template is evolving every time they are interacting with us. So that's one way we are mitigating this risk. The second one is these algorithms are, it may look like, okay, this person has grown beard, has hair, but the actual core, as I mentioned, is looking into their facial landmarks like eyes, mouth, nose. So these facial features and the template associated with them doesn't really significantly change. Unless there has been like some very significant change on the entire facial structure. So on those cases, it might be quite difficult in an automated way to make that decision. But otherwise, the algorithm is actually capable of doing that matching, irrespective of someone growing a bit of extra hair or facial hair, or changing their facial hair structure, etc.
I see. And another follow-on question from this actually is that, and actually this does go to something that you mentioned, Margit, as well. But how do you confirm that a selfie isn't a picture rather than a live human? Is it? I mean, I guess we're talking about AI here, and how do you, if something has been inserted into there, how does biometrics help to sort of mitigate that?
Yeah, I think that's one very common way that we see people are circumventing the controls, right? They think that it's easy to show someone else's face on a paper or a screen. So this again goes back to we have something what we call liveness checks. So what it does is to ensure the person who is doing the verification process is actually a human being or not. So there is a distinction between the skin texture and of a real human being and something that's shown from a screen or a paper. So our underlying machine learning models are capable of distinguishing between what does a skin texture of a human being look like, and what does something that is shown from a screen or a paper look like. And this is actually the same logic by which we look into deepfakes as well, where we are able to understand that inconsistencies in the facial geometry using during our selfie capture process to prevent fraud, while we know the consistency of what a real human being face look like. And Verif is able to do that because we are providing services globally, and our customers are supporting us well with different kinds of attacks and genuine customer images across the globe, across different ethnic groups. So we are able to scale this in a global way to make that distinction.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point here, isn't it? Actually, is that it's not just, an individual customer we're talking about here. We've got this network effect of dealing with so many customers, thousands of customers in all the regions of the world, and obviously people are trying to access their systems from everywhere in the world. So we've really got this complete picture of what's happening in the fraud landscape more generally, but specifically what's happening at the sharp end, where people are sort of starting to use new technologies and things like that, and being able to adapt our systems accordingly. I think is, a lot of the questions that came in earlier in the week were talking about the AI problem, if you like, and how we could solve it. But I think what you've answered there is actually probably good enough to tick off most of those questions. A lot of the other questions actually were around data, specifically kind of how it's stored. The security and privacy aspects around it. There's not really one question here, but do you just want to talk quickly about that? Because I think that is something that is obviously top of mind for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think biometrics always comes with regulations and challenges associated with it. So when I think about privacy and security, the first thing, I think I mentioned it earlier, we don't store the actual image. So that's the first and most important thing. Our biometric analysis is done based on a numerical representation we are creating based on that image. So we don't store actual selfie images. And even if we are storing this biometric template, this is done on secured servers, and it's no one is able to access this biometric template, and there is no way we as Verif or anyone could regenerate that selfie image based on that template as well. So I haven't seen a template, to be honest, myself, because I also don't have access. But ideally, if I look into it, it will be just a bunch of numbers. And even if I'm smart enough, I'm trying to recreate, I wouldn't be able to create anything meaningful out of it, because I don't have, it's not technically how we are built that system. So we are creating that template in a very secure way. And the second one is also we store it also in a very secured way. And most important thing is we also give that control to customers to decide on how long they want to store the data. Depending on the geography, we also give recommendations on how to capture the selfie. For instance, if there is any specific regulations around certain regions where you are not allowed to do processing, we also support those kind of requests as well. So depending on our customer needs, we give that flexibility on where the data is stored, even this template, how long it is stored as well.
Yeah. I think, look, this is such an area of, I think data storage is an area of such suspicion, I think, for a lot of people. But I think, as I mentioned at the beginning with the research that we've done, I think people are sort of gradually coming around to the idea that actually this is a really solid and robust system that is the safest and easiest to use, and is one that is sort of, we're starting to win people over, I think, mainly because we're being as thorough as we can possibly be with the data. That's a really good answer, Gio. So we are just about at time, actually. In fact, I think we might have gone a minute or two over, but let's just have a very quick some key takeaways on the slide here. Very briefly, I mean, obviously that you heard the narrative at the beginning, but online fraud is increasing, becoming more sophisticated. Your customers are becoming more demanding of their digital experiences as well, and just will not tolerate sort of UX. So irrespective of industry vertical, if your focus is on fighting fraud without impacting the customer experience, then facial biometrics are a must for you, really. And as Margit so eloquently described, the use cases are numerous. Be it from multi-accounting, account takeover, and many others as well, including some of the AI aspects that Gio just mentioned as well. Biometrics are extremely powerful at preventing a lot of these things. So I think if you're looking at not only the sort of the login to account, but account recovery piece as well, I think that there is an option there for you. We do have, as I mentioned earlier on, just one piece of content just to tease in here. Our Biometrics Intelligence Report contains all the information you've heard today, all of the data points and everything else. Lots more descriptions about use cases and a real sort of depth of information as to why and how biometrics can be of help to businesses. So I think all that remains for me to say is a big thank you to both Gio and to Margit. Actually, I think it was very insightful stuff from both of you. So thank you both for joining. And then I will say thank you, everybody, for listening as well. And hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for hosting us as well.
No worries. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.